When we look at Exodus chapter 22, and I think from verse 20, we saw the commandments, and then we continued on verse 21. In verse 22, the law here is to reveal the sin. Through the law comes the knowledge of Christ and turns us to the solution. The good news is Jesus came to save us. The law modifies our behavior, but it never rectifies our character, because only God can. The law sets the standards, and the law gives us what the knowledge of sin is. So if we look at verse 1, it says, if a man steals an ox or a sheep and slaughters it or sells it, he shall restore 5 oxen for an ox or 4 sheep for a sheep. If the sheep is found breaking in and he is struck, if the sheep is found and it has been sold, he will return to it 4 or 5 times. Now, when I was thinking about this, when you steal 1 sheep or an ox and you sell it, you will sell it for more. That's why you're required to give much more. And if it is found alive, then you're supposed to give back 1. So it says here in verse 2, if a thief breaks into the house at night and someone beats him up and kills him, the defender is not guilty. If we look in the laws at the time, the houses were made of mud, and so to actually break in, they would use an instrument. So if they were found breaking into that, it is assumed that the person who was inside the house would be killed by the instrument that they were using. So if they had killed him, they were not guilty. So let's go to verse 3. If the sun is risen on him, they shall be guilt for his bloodshed. He should make full restitution. If he has nothing, then he shall be sold for his theft. So when it says if the sun is risen, so if it's in the broad daylight and that happens, it's assumed that we can see the person, and so he should make full restitution. The difference, I think I'll just read what I've written. The difference between breaking through at night and in the day. In verse 3, you can see the thief and there is full visibility. But if it's during the day, you can see the person and it was considered to be over the line, exacting too much. So let's go to verse 4. In verse 4, it says, if the thief is caught with one of the owner's animals in his possession, whether an ox or a donkey or a sheep, he is to pay back double 2 animals for 1. If he steals it and sells it, he shall restore it 4 or 5 times. If he steals the animal and it still has maybe its parts, he pays double. In those days, we're marked by stores of animals. Don't know that they may go to your neighbor's property and have to keep watch. In those days, the land was marked by stones. And so the animals were not aware that they needed to see the stones as a boundary. So they would go across and they would eat in the neighbor's property. So the people who kept the animals had to keep watch so that they didn't go into the properties. They had to make sure that they didn't eat into their neighbor's field. It also says in verse 6, if a man starts a fire to burn the weeds in his field, and the fire is spread into another man's field and burns up the grain growing, there or what has been cut and stacked, the one who started the fire has to pay for the damages. So if the person was out cooking and a fire starts, they were responsible for restoring the grain or the field that was caught up by the fire. Let's go to verse 7. If a man gives money or other valuables to his neighbor to keep for him, and the neighbor agrees, and the thief breaks into the neighbor's house and steals, when the thief is caught, he must pay back double what he stole. Another thing about these verses, for example, if your neighbor asked you to keep his car in their garage while they went away, and then while they were away, the thief came and stole that car. And for some reason, you had to go to the court of law. What happens there? You swear by the Bible. Only a person who is, I don't know, not real would be able to swear that he has not stolen it. So if that neighbor is able to do that, then he is proving that he has not done it. Let's go to verse 7. If a man gives money or other valuables to his neighbor to keep for him, and the neighbor agrees on, a thief breaks the neighbor's house and steals them. When the thief is caught, he must pay back double what he stole. Why does it say pay back double? I was thinking about this. You take a responsibility of something, make sure you take care of it, but somebody else comes and does something that is not expected. You're still expected to restore what has been taken. Let's go to verse 8. But if a thief is not caught, the neighbor who agreed to keep the valuables must come before the judges and swear that he did not steal them. And in that way, he declares his innocence, as I have said. But verse 8 says, but if the thief is caught, the neighbor who agreed to keep the valuables must come before the judges to swear that he did not steal them. And in that way, he declares his innocence. A lot of people go to court and declare their innocence by swearing on the Bible. In verse 9, in all cases of dispute about property and illegal possession of goods, whether it be cattle, donkeys, sheep, clothing, or any other valuables, both parties must appear before the judges, and one who is found guilty must pay back double what he took. If a man gives his neighbor a donkey, an ox, or a sheep, or any other animal to keep for him, and the neighbor agrees, but the animal dies, is injured, or stolen, when no one is watching, the neighbor is to take an oath that he did not kill or injure the man's animal, and the man is to accept his neighbor's oath as true restitution is to be imposed. If we think about it in all these verses, and even verse 14, where it talks about if a man borrows an animal from another man and it is injured or it dies while he is using the animal, he must make restitution. But if the owner is with his loaned animal and it happens, the borrower does not have to pay. If the animal was rented out and it dies, the man does not have to pay because the loss is covered by the hiring fee. Now, the Hebrew word for restoration is shalom, to make whole or complete, related to another Hebrew word which a lot of us Adventists use, which is shalom, which means peace or completeness. The idea of these commandments or of restitution is, it's more than saying I am sorry to bring peace. You have to do something or pay back something. The restoration or compensation sews it all back together. You don't get away scotch-free because it will cheapen the act that was committed, whether we meant it or not. Let's go to the next verses. So if we go to verse 16, if a man seduces a virgin who is not pledged to be married to have sex with him, he must pay a dowry to the parents and marry her. This is really interesting. But if the father refuses to give her to him because he feels he's an idiot, he must pay the dowry as if he were going to marry her anyway. This tells us about premarital sex or fornication. And the solution of having sex is getting married, because that's what it was meant for in the first place. The message here is, when you play, you pay. This is clear. This is a clear-cut verse of premarital sex, even though a lot of people do not even talk or think about it in this way. And then if we look at verse 18, it talked about anyone who practices witchcraft must be put to death. Anyone who has sex with an animal must be put to death. You must put to death anyone who sacrifices an animal to any god other than the Lord. And here we had looked at whatever idol, for example, when we have an idol, the idol has eyes but does not see, a nose does not smell, a mouth does not speak, and yet he has legs but cannot walk. So when you worship that kind of idol, you become like that idol. Do not mistreat or oppress an alien. Remember how you were treated when you were in Egypt. So here, even for us, when somebody who is not of where we live, we shouldn't mistreat them. Let's treat people how we would love to be treated. Then he talks about lending money. If you lend money to one of your own people who is very poor, do not take advantage of him by charging him interest. He's already poor, and the fact that he's coming to ask for some money is a sign that he needs help. So why would you charge him interest? If anything, and I think it's in the New Testament, you can give it to him because you are able to. If you agree to take a poor person's cloak when he uses it at night to cover himself as pledge that he'll repay, give it back to him before sunset. I like this because it means that you are also showing some kind of compassion or empathy, because if you kept it from him during the night, he would be cold, and perhaps maybe in this cold weather, he may be able to die. But you can take it in the day when he is awake, but give it back in the night when he goes back to sleep. Because perhaps that is the only thing that he has to keep him warm. Verse 28, do not curse God or any leader as a judge or a ruler. Do not hold back offerings. Actually, on that, do not curse the ones who rule you. Instead of cursing, let's pray for them. Let us do good. And when we do good and pray for them, the Lord is going to work a miracle to do what is right for them. Verse 29, do not hold back offering for the Lord with your grain, your grapes, or olive oil at harvest time. And don't forget that your firstborn son belongs to the Lord. The firstborn male of your cattle and of your sheep also belong to the Lord. Let the firstborn stay with its mother for 7 days, and on the 8th day, give it to the Lord. I want you to be holy and healthy people. So don't eat meat of an animal that has been attacked or torn by wild dogs, beasts, but throw the meat to the dogs. This reminds me of a time when people would find a dead chicken or a dead body of animal that is edible. There would be those people who, because they do not have food, would actually wash it off, eat it, cook it and eat it without even knowing what was wrong with it. There are people who have died as a result of that. And so when this is in the Bible, we need to take heed and take notice. So in summary, what have we learned from these laws? I'll just read. It says, the people of God should be ready to show mildness, empathy, and mercy according to the spirit of these laws that are laid out. We must answer to God not only for what we do maliciously, but also for what we do unintentionally. Therefore, when we have done harm to our neighbors, we should make restitution. Though not compelled by the law, we should. Let these scriptures lead our souls to remember that if the grace of God has indeed appeared to us, then it has taught us and enabled us so to conduct ourselves by his holy word and power, that denying ungodliness and worldly lust, we should live soberly, righteously, and godly in this present world. Titus chapter 12, verse 12, and the grace of God teaches us that as the Lord is our portion, there is enough in him to satisfy the desires of our souls. We should seek to restore that which we have taken. And as we restore, we are brought to Christ. So restoration is very, very important. Sometimes we may have to pay for that restoration, but we should. Because if we think about the ultimate price of Christ dying for us, and so that we can be restored from sin. So that is the takeaway for us today. Have a blessed day. Amen.